My guest today is someone who holds what might be the most interesting contradiction in the AI space right now. She's one of the people most dedicated to helping organizations adopt AI, and she absolutely refuses to let it anywhere near her own creative work. She started in Brixton, got to Cambridge, wrote for The Guardian, The Financial Times, and Private Eye. And then she spent years inside some of the biggest names in financial services, Reuters or London Stock Exchange Group, where she watched innovation transform how people work from the inside. She then founded After AI, a framework helping individuals and organizations figure out what to do with all the time and creative space that AI actually frees up. Oh, and she just won a blockbuster screenwriting award in Hollywood. Victoria Silverman, welcome to Women Lead AI. So thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited to have you here. The first thing that I wanted to ask you, you're one of the most vocal advocates for AI adoption, but at the same time, you said publicly that you never let AI near your creative work. And I want to start there, and I want to understand how do those two things live in the same person?
It's a really good question, because I love AI and the things it can do. But if you look at what it can do with screenplays, the output is terrible. You know, you have a play and you just go, oh my God, this is really bad. And a lot of people in the industry know that. And they would immediately see if you'd written something with AI, it would just, there's a uniformity. And I write with my co-writer, Norma J. Hibbert, and you know, we'd been working on a piece, a TV pilot, and she'd done the outline, we'd built the characters, you know, this has been bubbling up since 2022. And I just thought, I'm just going to write the TV pilot and get it done using my golden hours, which, AI helped me do my tax return in a couple of hours rather than 3 days that it would take me before. So I'm using that kind of time where I'm using AI to help me in my general life. And, you know, I wrote the pilot, and I do the bare bones and then we work it up together. And I sat next to her and she read it, and I'm sitting there like an expectant father, and she grabs my hand and she goes, Vic, it's good. It's really good. Now, if AI had done it, you know, my poor ego would be thinking, well, you know, but she liked it because I'd done it. And unfortunately, creative people are very at the center of their own ego universes. So I honestly don't think it's viable at the moment. It will be, but it will never have a lived experience that us two have had, you know, which is, I could probably tell you, Victoria, over a glass of wine or a box of wine, I think would take, you know, all the things we've been through. AI can't do it. It can't get back creativity.
Where do you think is that balance between the, you know, you, for example, asking it to write an outline versus you asking it to write a script, versus I saw like the other day a whole trailer of a movie being done using, you know, I think it was Midjourney, and it was incredible. So I was really surprised that it was made using AI. But where do you think, you know, is that balance where, oh, it's still like my work and my idea?
I have seen those trailers and those things, and it's so tempting. But the only time I've used it on our feature film that we won the award for the screenplay, Best Drama, is a production house who were interested in taking it on as a project. We did an actors read through with them, and we changed the script considerably because the actors always have better ideas, which AI, unless it's got kind of built-in actors who can feel it. We're not feeling enough tension, we want more peril, we want more thrill, we want it to be a thriller. So we changed it, and the production house said, can you tell us what changed from the actors read-through script to the new script? And then I put both PDFs. I made sure that the back end was locked so that this couldn't be shared and the AI couldn't learn from it. I didn't want that to happen. So hopefully protecting the IP. I put both PDFs in and it came up with a one-pager which said, on page 22, you changed this scene to this. On page 32, and that would have taken me a week. But that's the only time. And that is really... I am so tempted to create a trailer for our film or using AI. I just think that at the moment it feels like cheating.
Okay.
And
is that what's stopping you?
I don't know. I think it's just not, the industry doesn't like it. People would say that's just AI. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the bringing together of actors in a room who read, interpret, who live your words, I think is very valuable, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. It might be a good thing to get you across the line, to get an agent to say, look, we'll put our script into AI and this is what it thinks the trailer would look like. Can you imagine Paramount running with this? Yes, but for me, it would feel wrong, although I'm an advocate for AI. I think the real stuff, the good stuff, won't be taken over quickly.
Do you think there could be a case made, for example, let's say I'm a student at a university and I'm part of filmmaking society and I want to make a kind of James Bond style movie, right, with big explosions and all of those things. Obviously, I don't have the budget for it. For example, using it for that, what would you say about that?
It's good as an experiment. And, obviously parts of your production, your big explosions, riding off a cliff, unless you're Tom Cruise or you can get Tom Cruise, someone who wants to do their own stunts, it will happen. It's like the green screen, suddenly people aren't traveling to Hong Kong from, say, Paris because the green screen can do it well now. In the beginning, you could tell it was green screen. Now you can't. So, yeah, of course it will happen. It will happen. But you will lose some of the skill that makes a film incredible. And when you get to know people in the industry, they started by making shorts in their own back gardens, and then they've really, really honed their skills, and they've got that sense of what all this shot mean, what's going to happen here. Oh God, what if we subvert that and do this? Which AI may not have that ingenuity, but it may be that you prompt it well and it does. I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying at the moment is the time we find ourselves in. It's good that you're pressing me on this, and I am so tempted, but I dare not. Partly because the people we talk to, we go out to Cannes, we've been out in LA they really are not ready yet for their way of working to be sort of lost. And, eventually the cartographers of big cities had to concede that Google Maps is brilliant, so it will adjust, but at the moment it's not ready, and it's not, it will be cheaper, but there'll probably be a 2-tier stream running where you'll have the AI made films that people can buy maybe at a discount, and then you'll have the real films, and that will continue, and they will have real actors, real value, people that stand out, who really know how to act. And it's, when I was thinking about coming here today, we've had, 150 million years when we were pre-verbal. So one sloped eyebrow, one raised shoulder, one glance from an actor. It's unique to them. It's their fingerprint. It's the way that they act. And AI will have a good shot at replicating that and giving it personality, but it won't be the same. It won't stand out for people. People pay a premium to see a real film.
Yeah. I guess when I think about, for example, athletes and watching Olympics, like the reason why it is so fascinating is because that someone has put hours and hours of training into that, right? That they've spent the last 4 years doing just that one thing.
Yeah.
And the reason why, we hate, for example, people that do doping in athletics is for that reason, that it feels like they're taking a shortcut. So maybe like you say, there is kind of an argument to be made that effort is part of the value that we as an audience have, right?
Yeah. I mean, do you feel it when you get on your streams, you're on social media, and suddenly there's dancers come up? And at first I thought, wow, these are really good dancers. But then you realize it's AI. No one could dance like that. I mean, how does it feel when you see that? Do you...
When you see, for example, someone doing like gymnastics, it's like, oh, it's incredible that human can do that. But if it's not human doing it, then is it so incredible?
Exactly. See, that's what we need. We need the joy of the incredible. And a feature film is a massive feat. I mean, it's thousands of people, and each one has a speciality, and the costumes, the people who build the sets. These are like real experts, and they're like Olympic athletes. They have trained and trained and trained, tried, they've done different things, and they all come together, and their individuality coming together is... it's magic. And I think that there are areas where we can't lose the magic, but there are areas where it just makes sense to use AI.
Yeah. Let's go back to your journey. And you went from a comprehensive school in Brixton to doing an MPhil in Cambridge, and you then became a journalist, and then worked in some of the biggest financial institutions that are out there. Where does AI enter that story?
Yeah, so we go back to 2016, and I've been doing a comms job in financial and risk business at Thomson Reuters, and there's 49,000 people, and we've got the innovation labs. And at that point, so Reuters, the news agency, were creating algorithms to detect fake news, because it's the cleanest news agency in the world. Every story has to be real. It can't be invented.
And that was back in 2016.
And at the same time, blockchain, the distributed ledger, was causing quite a storm, because people were saying, look, if you work in accounting, if you work in banking, in 10 years you won't have a job. It's all going to be on the blockchain. We're really in trouble. So I had this brilliant job. I love Director of Innovation Enablement, and we were in every country in the world. It was a small, tiny, all-women kick-ass team. And I go to the people in the labs, and some of them had like 3 or 4 PhDs in maths, and they were just at the cutting edge. And I'd have to say to them, look, can you explain to me how an algorithm works as if I was 7?
This is what I prompted my AI to do.
And then they'd explain it, and I go, okay, well, let's take this down a notch. Can you explain it to me as if I were your cat? Because they would just, and they go, right, all right, let's explain Bayesian statistics to you. And it was my job to kind of translate what was going on, and so that's where it started, and that whole blockchain thing, and then the early application of algorithms in a business setting that was accelerating fast. And I have to say, there were some incredible women working in that field, and big shout out to Joyce Shen, who, follow her if you can on LinkedIn. I mean, she's doing phenomenal work, really, really good work. And there were just people who come in, they chalk up their algorithm on a board, and then you would have to dissect it, understand it, what can it do, where can it go. And everybody, because they were lovely, brilliant, intelligent people who had very little ego, they were talking about the ethics and what does this mean for the world. So my ears were pricking up and going, okay, we all think that we're going to hell in a handcart because you're going to have this agentic learning and it's going to do its own thing. But the people behind it are really responsible. I don't think there's a mad kind of wizard going, ha ha ha, or James Bond villain controlling it all.
Yeah.
I'm relatively sure that although people do want money, they're also humane and they're thinking about the world, although they know that there will be consequences of applying AI rapidly.
And in that role, I know you managed to get return on investment in innovation 333%. Can you tell me about that and how did this happen and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so obviously I'm part of a team, got a fantastic global leader who's out in North Carolina. We're spread across the world, across Europe, across India. It's like a kaleidoscope of innovation. And we had a fantastic chief of staff, the late Carla Jones, who she brought me into a room and she said, I think you're quite creative. How can we use this in the business? So she was open to doing that, and in all businesses, you have pockets of genius and you have pockets of people who want to move ahead and want to do things, but they're also really annoying for the people who plan 3 to 20 years in advance, your financial planners, so you've got all these people who are rolling, they're lean, they're agile, they're all about small experiments and pivoting. And I loved those people. But it's also quite hard. You're an operations person, you've got a supply chain, like you've got it all lined up, it's all rolling quite smoothly. Why the hell do you want the people in the jeans and the t-shirts to start disrupting everything? But, businesses I'd worked in had gone, well, do the customers feel? What do they feel? And they say, well, we're not moving fast enough or we're not at the cutting edge. So then we took an approach. So obviously there was a catalyst fund, which it was like a Dragon's Den or a Shark's Tank. You could go in, you could pitch an idea.
So that was within Reuters. So they had so the company put together a fund and the employees were able to pitch their ideas?
Yeah. And then you could have up to $100,000 or more, and you could backfill your own role and you could go off and develop your innovation.
Oh, wow.
So, but, there was quite a bit of money put into it. So we take 90 people who were at the cutting edge of AI at that point. We all went to Bangalore, we all went to Zug in Zurich, and we would work on a challenge, a series of challenges that the business needed, or the customers through the labs had said, we want to get smart contracting, or we want to do things in a different way. That was very technical AI and, blockchain related. It wasn't the sort of organizational HR functional stuff at all. And then we did operational challenges for innovation. And then we did do some of the lovely soft stuff. So we ran this campaign called Dare to Disrupt. And at that point, people in the office, this is pre-COVID. And what we did was, every time there was a flip chart, we got people to write something that would spark innovation for another team coming into the room. Then people did it online because it's global business. They did haikus, people built storyboards in corridors to try and get other people thinking. And what they did was, I got them to take a selfie and then hashtag it with Dare to Disrupt, so everyone could find the inspiration that the whole business was creating. That was fun. Do you know what I mean? That obviously didn't incite the action, but then we created a whole system where you could identify what kind of innovator you were in the business. Were you a technovator, where you understood and loved technology, and we put you into sort of a one group. 49,000 people did it. It was an e-learning that brought you in and helped you identify how you innovate. Were you an entrepreneur? Were you someone who wanted to physically give up your time, and that discretionary effort because you couldn't help yourself from making new stuff? And so what it was saying really was, if you're a disruptor, there's a place for you. You exist here. So, or were you just someone who liked to bring in knowledge? And if you went off to an event, you came back and you had a coffee or a virtual coffee with your team, and you just explained, I've been out to this conference. There's all this stuff happening with wearables, VR, and the labs were looking at that as well. So you could have a subject matter expert come and talk at your coffee or your lunch and learn or whatever it was.
Like, to me, it sounds like a culture within the company where innovation is like one of the North Stars,
Yeah.
I think within a week of being in a new company, you kind of either have that feeling of, oh, this is the kind of company where they believe either they disrupt themselves or, someone else will disrupt them, or it's the kind of company where actually, this is the way we do things. And if we're forced to move because competitor has improved, then we'll do that. But we're not like that open to it. How do you think you can like create that kind of culture within the company? And is it the case of like, because it sounds to me like Thomson Reuters, they basically put the money where their mouth is, right? Where they had that fund, and they realized that, right, if we want innovation, we need to have like budget for it.
Yeah, you have to invest. But to be fair, they weren't at the cutting edge at that point, but customers, they could see that their competitors were. So, if you go into a Google or a Facebook or a Meta, it's baked in, right? And they're employing you because you've got that creativity. And then you do go to places where things are good, and it's like, why rock the apple boat? This is working. There is a problem because everyone who's asked this question will say, we have to have psychological safety. And in a way, that's what all this funding of innovation did. You had psychological safety. You didn't have it in every team, right? And sometimes there were team leaders who were like, I've got 3 people out on maternity leave, and now you're telling me someone wants to backfill their role so they can go off and, create something that might not even work. I'm understaffed. I've got 5 people off sick as well. No, and then it was a negotiation. And we would advocate for the people who really wanted to do that. But for me, psychological safety, right, cannot work if people are tired. So especially in the financial bit of the business, you had a lot of presenteeism. You had a lot of really hardworking people who would be in at 7 and then they would finish at 7 and then there would be networking drinks and they'd be supporting, business resource group, etc. And then I think it's harder because when you get people who are really, really tired, they cannot innovate. Their brain is on high alert and it's ready for fight or flight. And it's not doing a lot of other stuff. So it's not an easy path. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like a wonderland where everyone went, oh yeah, lovely. Yeah, let's do that. Let's look at an algorithm that can do X. Because at that point, what we're doing works. They want to do the work that's going to get them the bonus. Then, you look at how do you reconfigure remuneration? How do you get what people are doing as entrepreneurs recognized within their performance review and sort of paid for? So that is the challenge. Like, it's not easy.
If I was a leader, I would be like, okay, I'm bought into innovation, but how do I get return on investment? And I think is it the case that, you just know that if you make however many experiments, you eventually will get that innovation and those potentially productivity gains? Or is it, something else?
I think it is structural. And I think, the whole Lean, Six Sigma, innovation methods, which are probably being surpassed by new things I don't know about. But I think that just looking at things in a lean way, doing small experiments, small steps, move fast, is still valid, really valid. And in your own life, don't you? We're sold so many vitamins and minerals. You take it for 3 weeks. If you don't look like Olivia Dean or Hannah Fry, you just go, no, I'm not spending on this anymore. So we're doing it in our own lives, and doing it at work is harder because you have got your finance people who might not be agile, or they might. That's a joy, isn't it, to have people working with you, collaborators who are really agile. And one of the things I'm doing with After AI is helping founders market themselves and really reach customers, because it's relatively new. So we're all scrambling and sort of seeing what works, how do we do it? And I'm working with an AI founder, and she's just a machine, and she literally thinks that you should feel uncomfortable doing something. It should stretch you and it should be painful, and you do it, and if you muck up, it doesn't matter. And I love it because she's created a really great platform for schools and communities and for people to get a scale of economy when they buy things for schools and education. And big up Yvonne. It's a spirit, it's an esprit to go with it and find the right people who feel the same, and then have for one who's a bit slower, who goes, oh, hang on a minute, why are you pivoting? That actually worked, because sometimes you get too busy with iterating and changing, and oh, hang on, that's not going to give you as much of a return, but your return on investment is going to be good, or that has potential for growth that your perfect thing might not.
Yeah, I think in companies where I worked, like sometimes that culture of innovation is you can kind of feel it more or feel it less, but it is, at the end of the day, I think a lot of companies have that. At the same time, the end of quarter is coming.
Yeah.
And we have to hit this target. And obviously, and sales is one of the primary kind of factors that people look at. So if it goes down, then it impacts, their kind of stock market value. And I think, that's a very big challenge where with innovation, you have to have that look at, how do we want to position ourselves in 5 years' time? But actually, we're only looking in the next 2 months until the end of the quarter. But I would love to hear more about your work with after AI. What is it that you do? And as I understand it, you look a lot at what happens after AI is introduced in the company. I think a lot of people will go for that, transformation sort of phase, and they help companies with that. But yeah, would you tell me more?
So sort of 3 levels. So when I say after AI, that's because I think AI is here. Do you know what I mean? So even if you're not deploying it in a company, if you've got 50 people who can save 1 hour a day because AI helps with their emails or helps with their plan or whatever it is, their planning or their analysis, making sure it doesn't hallucinate, but it's getting better. But whether it can help you speed up in your own job, the instinct is to do more busy work. But if you had 50 people in a company and each one of them set aside a golden hour, right? And you haven't even got AI, you're kind of telling the shareholders that it's coming, or you've got systems in place that are highly automated, right? Even if you haven't got anything, all of those employees that you've got amongst a team of 50 or a company of 50, if they can save 1 hour a day, you've got 12,000 hours a year, even with everyone taking off their 4 weeks holiday or whatever they're doing. You've got, all those hours. Now you could do something together with that, really innovative, or you could put it to your well-being, because when you have good well-being, you have more psychological safety, because then you don't have people who are running around like headless chickens on high alert because got to get this done and I can't think about anything else, which is how it is. I mean, most businesses are quite, it's a swan with the legs flapping underneath. And as you say, you've got to hit those targets. You've got to get that money in. So just say, well, look, we've all got an hour a day. How can we use that hour? So I've created a little calculator which calculates what people do and then creates a what not to do list, right? Which is very simple stuff. But then working out what will you do with that time, and how are you going to become more creative, more productive, more strategic, is looking at that. So with the big companies, that is it's workshopping, it's working out what the reality is for them and where they want to take their time as they adapt to AI. So, if you look at survival of the fittest, which Darwin took that phrase, it was phrased by Herbert Spencer in the 19th century. And what Darwin was seeing was that the best you are adaptive, the way that you adapt will help you survive. It's not the most intelligent and it's not the strongest. It's the ones who can work out what to do. And, he's looking at peppered moths, and they can make their wings go look like their surroundings and their environment, and they're surviving, and other little clever moths are not. So, if you put Mike Tyson in a room with a peppered moth, he's got no chance. He can be big and strong and punching away. Your peppered moth has found a little space behind the bookcase where no one's going to find it. So it is all about that survival. And then I am working with small companies and creators, so graphic designers and animators, illustrators, who are literally having their lunch stolen by AI, eaten every day by AI. They're going back years, some of them their profits have gone back 5 years, and they had big customers and they were well respected, and they are often freelance. And then it's about diversification, and obviously doing that work really cut price for them to say what would a new revenue stream look like. And for people who are arts sort of inclined, where AI is producing images and is doing stuff for basically nothing, taking their work, then you help them to look at, where are big growth areas. So there's a mental health crisis in the UK. How do you can you adjust what you're doing around towards art therapy at scale that you can handle? Or, how can what you do find its place now? Because we are after AI. The AI is there. Vic, you're saying it can create a trailer for a feature film, probably in about 10 seconds. And then all those camera people, all those, scene builders, set builders, costume designers, they're really having to look anew at what they do and how they can adapt. So after AI is just about the adaptation, but also bringing in some of the techniques that I've learned around being more creative, being more strategic, because I think those are always useful, even if your business isn't predicated on tech. It needs to be as creative as it can be.
So if I am a graphic designer and I got laid off from my job, and the reason is that the company had employed 5 of us, but now and I was responsible for, let's say, editing pictures of the products, but now with combination of Cloud Code and Nano Banana, I can edit hundreds of pictures in about 5 minutes. What would you say to that person? How can they utilize their skills to make money and have that likelihood when we look at the next 5 years?
Wow, it is a really difficult time for those people. It is tapping into what they can do and where they are and how they can adapt. So it's not going to be easy. There are no easy answers, but it is just thinking about what are the 3 biggest crises in the UK, right? So obviously mental health, housing, and now employment is going to be a bigger problem. And that person is literally feeling that. And I know so many people who are in that experience, in that situation. It's really about thinking it through. And I am experimenting with looking at fine artists and how they worked through disruption, Picasso especially, through the 20th century, kept changing, kept adapting what he was doing, and often innovating as well to do it. But it is not easy. And it might be, if you're self-employed, you might need to ramp up how you go to market, and you might need to invest in different ways. But I think all of us should be preparing and adapting, not just thinking that it's not going to happen to me, because every role will be possibly replaced.
And how do I prepare?
So I would say, right, I think the Americans are more forthcoming and easier with this, obviously generalizing about a very large population. But the Americans I've spoken to, they have always had, because they don't have healthcare, right? So they've always been a very large percentage, so between 55 and 75% of the American middle class deal in stocks and shares. So they have a fallback. I mean, I've known people make six-figure salaries, or not salaries, revenue from stocks and shares in America, people I've worked with on teams. So I think that if you're a woman, especially, get yourself a financial coach or a good financial advisor and start any spare money you get, even if it's small, start to do that. I think that if you have got savings, property will be a good thing. Obviously, we can't give financial advice. We're not financial advisors. But if you can get a cheap property at auction and rent it out, governments will still be paying housing benefit. They will still be helping people to live in places. I mean, this sounds crazy because, it sounds like I'm saying, oh, get some dry biscuits and a cupboard where you can, be ready for the zombies to start parading in the streets. But there will be a really big shift, and it's in the next 3 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear, about Amazon laying off 5,000 people, it doesn't feel that far away, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, all those companies are always laid off. I used to call it the annual cull. And I've worked in companies where they decided just before Christmas, let's tell. Yeah, I have worked, companies have always been automating and always changing, and people, unfortunately, in the Ukraine, suddenly they had this terrible war and your job is gone, your house might be gone, and you have to adapt, right? So there's not really a lot we can do. And same with creativity. Sometimes you've had religious zealotry, or you've had wars, you've had things that happen in life. We could all have an illness. So I think get yourself a golden hour, right? Get AI to give you a golden hour. It's almost like saying, okay, if you're gonna mess up my life, matey AI, I'm gonna use you to prepare and I'm gonna adapt.
And what does that golden hour mean to you? And what? Yeah.
So I got very friendly with time. I had a cancer diagnosis in 2020, and no, it was all right. It was a stage 1. It was, luckily, despite all the newspaper headlines, NHS was brilliant, and I got seen really quickly, and they sorted it out. So that was lucky. But I'd been to a coach about 10 years ago, and she said to me, look, I said, I feel like I'm not performing at my best. I've lost my mojo, and there's things I want to do. So I wanted to start a blog, a support kind of community for the parents of teenagers. And I wanted to do some more writing. I wanted to be doing my journalism. And she said, the only way anyone can do anything if you're busy, which all women are, do you know what I mean? Like, always, is you can make a golden hour. So at 9 o'clock, when the kids are in bed, partners washing up, you can use that golden hour, and you have to insist that it's your golden hour. You're going to be a prima ballerina. You are going to train. So take an hour, and if I did that, and so with the film, I had a lot on. And Norma and I, when we met, both of us had parents with dementia. Norma had a sibling with dementia as well. So we were looking after our children, nieces, nephews, and we had our own sort of physical battles and disease and stuff going on. And we were absolutely frustrated, but we knew we wanted to write something. And we were like, well, how are we going to do it? And I thought, well, I did manage to have my golden hour. I got the community for the parents of teenagers up and running. I did a column on the South London Press, regional newspaper, had every week. There was a time when it got too much, when my son was ill, I was ill, and my parents were ill, and I was like, "Well, okay, enough, like forget your golden hour." But I went, well, we've got this golden hour, so we did literally do that. And you just set yourself a time boundary. If you don't look at time and say, if I fritter you away, it's like money. You will never have any time. You will always have busy work. You will always have, the things you want to do, the giving and the loving and the family life that you need and that is part of life. But just carving out time, even before AI, was really important. But now I'm like, hang on a minute, AI can actually do that. Some of it for us, can do the grunt work.
But that's the difficult thing, isn't it? Because at work, I had this Excel spreadsheet, and I was like, oh, I want it to be more interactive. I would love to redo it. But I was never that good at Excel. I knew what, like, the output that I wanted, but I didn't know how to actually do it.
Yeah.
So I use the Copilot, and it has that agent mode where it can actually put in the formulas. So something that would probably take me 3-4 hours, it did it in 5 minutes, right? But what I did next is I looked at my to-do list, and I just went to, point number 2, 3, 4. So I feel like a lot of people are like me, where, okay, I managed to reduce that time that I had for that activity, but then I've got 5 other tasks to do.
So did you put your task list into AI and say, tell me how I can create an hour a day from this for me, for work, but will help me seem more valuable in my workplace?
That's a good point, right?
Or you can put your performance review, and you can say, I did this PDF of my performance review, obviously subject to data protection, but put it in and say, but how can I be more strategic? How can I have my boss's job in 3 months? Don't put that in. But do you know what I mean? Like, you can use it for you and get it. You could say, if you're a solopreneur, you can say to your AI, I want you to be my CEO, or I want you to be my executive chairperson, and coach me and make sure I'm doing the right things.
I think, using it for personal development is something that, like, people don't think about, when actually, 2 or 3 years ago, hiring someone who has that level of knowledge would have cost me, $500 per hour.
Yeah.
But now I have it in my pocket, and what people use it for is creating a custom meme, instead of thinking about how do I actually get that next position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is it, and we've got to use it to adapt.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like sort of asking your enemy to, AI is our frenemy, it's our friend now, and we've got to prepare. So get that golden hour.
You were featured on Channel 4 in, I think, a program that was called Will AI Take My Job? Which I think is a question that a lot of people, it keeps them up at night. What is your answer to that?
Yes, it's going to take lots of jobs, definitely. But you have to think that if you look at digitization, which took jobs, typing pools and lots of jobs, that organizations move glacially slowly sometimes. Did you see the Ciprini Alap Shah research? So actually it didn't quite make the headlines as much as it should have done, because it was just when the conflict in the Middle East was kicking off. But there was an international piece of research was on Substack. It was a blog by an AI creator and venture capitalist, Alap Shah, and he was saying that you're going to have, if 10.2% of white collar jobs go, then white collar workers make up 75% of discretionary spend in most advanced economies, and therefore you're going to have ghost GDP, right? You're going to have faster, better output by companies, but because no one's employed by them, you're literally going to have no one to spend any money on what's coming out, and so you're going to have this silly situation. And it's like quite an obvious thing to happen. And the jobs will go. But he was saying, or the research was saying, 2028. I think that's when we're going to hit crisis point. I think it will be much slower. But I still think that we should be ready to adapt. We are the peppered moth of survival. And, the Channel 4 program looked at all the different areas where AI could take over, and it pitted humans against the AI. In some cases, I think where the humans won out, even then the law, is one area which is ripe for change.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because from what I understand, when a lot of these labs were evaluating the performance of the models that they were coming out with, they had, I think it's something called Turing test.
Yeah.
But they found themselves in a position where they need to come up with a new test because the models are, too good at it. And what they've been recently doing is understanding how long can we have AI work on like a big project and compare that to, for example, human working on the same project. But they got to the point where it was about like 16, 18 hours. And obviously they didn't have the data for humans because no human can work continuously for that long. So, it feels like you're on that, on that train, and all of the labs, their belief is, if we don't come up with a new model and get to AGI, which is a whole separate conversation, as soon as possible, then that China will come out with it. So we have to be the first
there's definitely
ones.
a race. Yeah.
And I guess as a human in all of this, you think, oh, there's a new model coming out there. There's a new tool here. What do I do to to be relevant?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what would you say to that question?
Yeah, but it's going to be different, isn't it? So you have to look at your own situation and say, how can I be the most relevant? And it's what skills will my company need? And start adapting now. And even project management, that is going to be mechanized. Or I think understanding ethics and risk will be very valuable for people. Start doing some certification using your golden hour but it's what your company does, and where you can be. You can't say, well, it will become a great people manager, because you're going to be managing machines. I think being able to say, you don't have to know algorithms and AI inside out and back to front. It's like we get in a car, we don't really.
Yeah.
My brother knows how it works, but or a lift, you get in a lift, you don't fully understand how that lift is working, but you use it every day. And you're not going to go back to stairs all the time. Just be awake to it, but don't worry, because when I grew up, being ancient. It was like we were going to have a nuclear bomb was going to fall on our heads, and literally everyone joked and planned what would they do in their last 2 minutes or 3 minutes before the sirens began. And as a kid, you were like, "Oh no, it will happen," but it will probably happen quite slowly, because the AI founders, they can create the new model, but it's like blockchain. It existed, it's the thing, but who's bringing it on board and how quickly? And you do get the odd CEO who's putting out a lovely message saying, "Oh, I could replace you with 17,600. I could replace 17,600 people with AI." And it's like, you've got to be ready to go, "Well, bring it," and how you do that, try and get your investments up, just like your golden hour, put some money aside every month, some time aside to treat this as a real problem. And if I've got two young sons that they're young adults, so I started a family relatively young age, and one of them has really struggled to find work. He's done his degree, got a good 2-1, and tried everything to get work, and ended up working at a casino. And my other son's 4 years older. He stepped straight into a job, and he's paying 500 quid a month back in student loans. So the struggle's already there. So it's very hard to say that if you're under a certain age, how are you going to do this? But time, yes, you can do, although it's hard. I might have to do something on a Sunday afternoon rather than watch the football, or whatever, or have the time that you'd like and really work out what you're going to do. But the trouble is, if you retrain, you might retrain in an area that was also going to be taken over. So we're at a sort of thinking crisis of thinking it through and being fearful. But just if you find yourself spiraling and think, "Oh God, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage," just think about people in Ukraine or the Middle East. There's no house for them. There's no job. Their factory has been bombed. There's no electricity. And so things like that do happen. But eventually we find a way and we go through it. It's very hard.
And, when we think and look towards the future, what do you think, what is going to differentiate the companies and individuals that are going to come out of it stronger versus those that, are going to, let's call it, be left behind?
I think there are two things, right? There's the peppered moth, right? Survival of the fittest is the wrong term, but it's easy to get your head around. The people who adapt. So start adapting now. Use your time wisely. Don't waste mental brain energy. There's a really good book by Karen Whitelaw Smith, which is called The Butterfly Experience, and that says that no negative thoughts can help you, which is very different from toxic positivity. What it says is if you've got a problem, if you start to think negatively about that, it can't help you. So say you were in Paris and you knew the Germans were marching through your country in the Second World War. If you sat back and said, "Right, I'm really worried, I'm really worried, I'm really worried, I'm really worried," you're just using brain energy. Whereas if you say, "Right, I'm going to find the resistance group," or "I'm going to work out how I get to a bolt hole I've got a cousin in Nantes, I'm going to go and stay with them," or whatever it is. And someone goes, "Well, all the streets are clogged. How are you going to walk there?" Do you know what I mean? It's like, but you start to use your brain energy for something constructive. And even if having your golden hour where you get AI to do something, or you learn about stocks and shares, and you do start to make investment, you take it really seriously, and you maybe go to a money bags relative you say, look, can you seed fund me some money to do that, because I really need to do it. It will help you to start thinking better, because you can't be passive.
Yeah. I think it's always, when, like, my personal belief is that whenever a new technology comes in, you can either think and spiral into anxiety that this is going to replace me, my skills, and I'm going to get laid off. Or you can think, oh, wow, this is like the biggest opportunity that I've seen in my life.
Yeah, that's great. Are you able to do that? Have you got that?
I think it's like you said, that if you go that first route, then nothing constructive comes out of it, because it only puts you into a more depressive mode. If you think like, this is opportunity, what can I do with it? Then you think, oh, like it's a reframe. You reframe this in your mind, and then you think about like, oh, I can do that, I can do that, I can do something else. And then that helps you with those like next steps. And when we think about that, something that I've seen research on is that women are adopting AI at a lower rate than men. And you've led a lot of diversity and inclusion communications in the roles that you've been in. What would you say is the reason for that?
So I suppose women are represented less in tech roles, aren't they? And whoever is building the tech, making the tech, has a say in how the tech is. So that is, and who's funding the tech as well. Interestingly, I was working with a founder from Kenya, and she's noticed that an AI founder, that there's a very certain type of woman who's getting the VC funding and the angel investors, and they know women aren't getting that funding. Ridiculously small number of women founders are getting fully funded. Also, if you're relying on AI Copilot and you're a woman, I don't know how true this is. It seems that the women I know are more risk averse, right? Which is a great value in the financial sector, especially. Really thinking before you do something is a good idea.
I definitely, my attitude is always like, oh, if there is a problem, I'm thinking, oh, let's sleep on it, right? And my partner is like, no, I just want to make a decision.
Yeah, let's fix it. Let's fix it soon and do it. Yeah. I agree. So I think we are more careful. I mean, in the beginning, when you first played around with ChatGPT, you thought, who is this clown? It's just making stuff up. I've asked it stuff and it comes up with something. I've been like, no, that's not right. No. So I think we've lost a bit of faith. And an academic who works in this area is very hot on hallucination and what it means. I also think that there's some evidence that those problems are being ironed out, and I do think it's good for women to get back and if you've dismissed what AI is doing, to really have another look.
I think I come across many people that they've tried one tool and it was even like 7 months ago, and they're like, oh, it's rubbish, like it told me that something that is not truthful. And since then there have been free updates of that tool, and now it's completely different. So I think having that mindset, oh, I tried it once and it's not working for me, like it's very detrimental for people.
Yeah.
When we look towards the future, like I can think about a version of the future in which creativity becomes less valuable because it's outsourced to AI. And at the same time, it can be, the most valuable thing when we think about, well, if it's not a challenge to actually like create a product, but the challenge is having good taste, then actually, having that creativity and having that good taste is really valuable. Which way do you think we're gonna go? And what do we need to do to make sure we are on the right side of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, someone I know who works in customer service AI created a website for a business and showed it to me, and I thought, oh, that's fantastic. I've done it all with AI really quickly, but it was good. Like, it was top notch. But then I saw another business, someone doing something different that had exactly the same look and feel. You are going to get a lot of repetition. It's like crowdsourcing, right? You're gonna crowdsourcing is great, and why shouldn't you crowdsource from all the world's experts? You can come up with good stuff, like it's clever, and it can be brilliant. I think the trouble is it can't be original, which is where all that stuff about AI trailers and AI films is you lose that originality, and you won't be able to get the uniqueness of projects. Each graphic designer comes in with their own thinking, their own ideas, everything's filtered through their experience, and you can get brilliant original work. I think that's much harder with AI. And I know a photographer Tim, he was around on shoots with Princess Diana, right? So he'd been a long time in the game, and then digital photography came in, and everyone went, "Oh, we can do digital photography. That's fine. Yeah. We've all got our own iPhones and good digital cameras. We're going to do it." And he had to spend £50,000 upgrading his equipment, etc. He no longer needed a dark room, so he got some space back in his house. But he and I think it was quite hard, but he stayed in the game, and then people realized that his work was actually much better than someone with a digital camera trying to take a picture. And so now he's really in demand because people have worked out that kind of photography he does it's him in a way, So I think we always do, don't we? We always sort of, you have your thesis, your antithesis, and your synthesis. And for people who want, you've got a tutor in your pocket. I remember going to a school, I was doing head of comms role for a charity, and we went out to lots of schools, and there was one school where they got people who had a 4 in their GCSEs, so people who got really bad marks, and then they worked with absolute passion to bring all these young people up to a really high level at their A levels so that they could get high A levels. And I said to him, "What do you think about AI?" And I thought he was going to go, "Oh, well, the kids are cheating, and it's ruining my life, and I feel really bad." And he said instead that AI was the best thing that had ever happened to those children from disadvantaged backgrounds because they had a tutor in their pocket. So now it's not just mummy and daddy are going to spend 70 quid and I'm going to have a tutor. Because the kid who hasn't got mummy and daddy, has also got that tutor. He said it was a great equalizer. So I think what will happen is that we're also in the cycle of hype, and fear, and everything we do is based on fear. Everything we consume from the number of face creams I use and hair conditioners and all the rest of it is based on the fear of looking, my age, which is ridiculous. And every newspaper you buy, every time you scroll the Guardian online, is all every news story is built around fear. It's that amygdala in your head. And a lot of time in comms, people say to you, I know, let's do a newsletter with good news. And then you have to go, well, it's not going to work. And I go, you don't know that. People like good news. In an age of bad news, people like good news. And unfortunately, we're just not wired for that, It just doesn't work.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's do a fast round. I'll ask you 3 questions and just a short answer to them. So what's one AI tool or workflow that really changed the way how you work?
Podcast LM.
Okay, what was that?
So it's a little app and you can take a lot of information. So for example, I was working with a CEO who was phenomenally busy and didn't really have headspace for a lot of new regulation and law that was coming in. So I took all of that regulation, all of the white papers, everything that was proposed. I put it into Podcast LM and it created a podcast.
Oh, it's like a notebook LM.
Yeah.
I've used
and
that, yeah.
you can listen to it in the car going.
Yeah.
And so the CEO, she started to use it all the time, and I could put the board notes in and then there'd be a podcast. And just before she went to the next board meeting, rather than reading the minutes, it took me a second to do, and, when I showed it to my partner or my sons, they were like, oh, it's creepy having somebody's voice and shouldn't
It sounds really real though.
It sounds
it's not
really,
robotic.
really real. It's not robotic. It's brilliant. And I use it for myself. So if I've got to remember something and I'm short on time, I put it in there and it teaches me. I'm listening to it and it's lovely. And it's 2 or 3 people chatting about something.
What's the best piece of advice for someone who is scared that AI will take their job?
Get adapting now, right? You're the peppered moth. It's not the fittest and it's certainly not the most intelligent. It's people who start adapting. So use your golden hour, try and get some investment advice and really get going, stocks and shares. If you can get a cheap flat at auction and you get rent coming in, do it, because it's key that you have some backing to help you through the shocks. And even if you can't do any of that, just take an hour a day, but don't get rid of that time by more busy work. Say, okay, I'm going to put my to-do list into AI. Let it tell me, I'm going to put my performance review into AI. Obviously, looking after privacy, you certainly don't want your company to know completely, to see what you're doing if it's not allowed or it's going to give it away.
Obviously follow your own policy.
Yeah. Adapt yourself now slowly. And the 2 things. So one is that adaptation. The other thing is family and friends. And, sometimes we get estranged or we fall out, try and mend those relationships because it's families that survive, and go together or deep friendships. Try not to find out if you're falling out with people, why you're falling out with people, and mend and heal, because you've got to be in this together. You've got to help each other.
Yeah, I think you can always find ways to lift each other up, right?
Exactly. Lift other people up.
Yeah.
That is key to adapting.
Finish this sentence. The most valuable human skill is?
The most valuable human skill is adaptation. It's getting used to it,
Change is the only constant.
Yes, and change is a pain in the butt, but you get good things. So, when you have a baby, you're like, what? I can't even can't go to the toilet without lugging a child with me. Like, but you will get the most out of life. Yeah, when we all rock into our old ages, hopefully, it's all those things that matter, and somehow you always manage to survive it. I mean, I've survived quite a lot of poverty as a young person, but be prepared, do your research, get your golden hour, try and get some investments going so you're not exposed, or you can have some rents coming in. This is all very kind of commercial or materialistic, and I'm not like that. I just think that we need to survive.
Yeah, I mean, if you're struggling for money, you don't have like enough money to cover your rent or food, then that's the only thing that you can think about, right? So you have to make sure that you have those necessities.
And even with the cost of living, it's already hard for people, even people on quite good wages. So it might get worse, but it will test us and then it'll get better.
No, thank you so much for your time. And if someone is interested in getting in touch with you, either to work with you for your company, or they're interested in the movie that got the awards, where they can find you and where they can find the film as well.
Yeah, so Victoria Silverman or Victoria Harbord, my maiden name, on LinkedIn is a good starting point. DM me or email me. And there is another company called After AI, but I've trademarked the After AI brand. So it's a trademark of a company called The Missing Manual Limited. So if you feel you need a manual for life with the advent of accelerated AI and agentic AI, get in touch. Victoria at missingmanuallimited.com. And obviously the usual Instagram, Facebook.
Awesome. We'll put the link to it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Every conversation on this podcast exists because of one simple belief: that when women understand AI, engage with it, and lead with it, something shifts. Not just for them, but for the organizations they are part of and the people around them. If you want to keep exploring that with us, Women Lead AI is more than a podcast. It is a community, a learning space, and honestly, one of the best conversations happening in this space right now. Come join it, details in the show notes, and see you next week.